I'm really excited. I've been having a great time studying for the LSAT. It sort of just had this aha moment on terms of it's really just this big puzzle of self-management, which I feel really good at doing, especially being a professional dancer, considering adrenaline, timing, fatigue management, health, all of that's going really well. And then the other portion of it, speed keeps coming up. And the more and more I just invest in like understanding theory and understanding sort of like memory drills of reading a stimulus, covering it with a Post-it note, the better I get at memory and just comprehension, the speed is sort of taking care of itself. I just watched a video of yours recently that was talking about the habits of high scorers, looking at the stimulus almost holistically, instead of just focusing on question type. And I think I've watched that video or heard that from you maybe 10 times. And I just understood what you meant, really understood what you meant just a few days ago. So I'm having a great time.
That's fantastic to hear. People don't always say that about LSAT studying. So I'm glad that you're having that kind of experience and it's clicking.
Yeah, it's been going really well. I have you here. So I want to ask, a few questions, of course, if you don't mind, if I just jump right in.
Yeah, feel free, please.
Okay, great. So obviously review organization is huge, and looking at review is the Socratic method. I am sort of curious. I used to I'm wondering what your organization tools are, or like what you've heard of people organizing. Right now I'm working in Google Sheets, and I've been working in terms of like question type, question stem type. But the deeper I get into the LSAT prep, the deeper I'm wanting to look at my review and in strictly that Socratic way. So I was sort of thinking of having one base being question type, and then the other axis being where it went wrong, misunderstanding the stimulus or misunderstanding an answer choice, maybe misunderstanding the task at hand. And I'm thinking if I can do a combination of question type with that and plug in there, and then I'm wondering if that's easy to read. What are your thoughts on organizing that?
Yeah, sure. It sounds like you're describing a sort of matrix where you have on one axis, as you said, question type, another axis, maybe something else in terms of what might have gone wrong. Yeah. I don't know that you need to go in that direction because, as you said, it may not even really be about question type. So that information may not even necessarily be useful.
Definitely. Okay. That's what I was trying to figure out. I'm like, am I taking this too far? Kind of like, where's my time really most valuably spent? Okay, so maybe a Socratic review. What do you think? Google Sheets? Is that what you're hearing people are using? Just keeping a tally? Do you think keeping a tally, or do you think like maybe putting that PT 26, section 3, Q19 and coming back to it? Is that sort of the most efficient way to do this?
I mean, I definitely hear people using Google Sheets or even just a Google Doc. Whatever works for you. I think it's not really about categorization as much as just figuring out where you went wrong. In terms of systematizing it, I think of it 3 different parts: stimulus, question stem, answer choices. If you want to divide it up further, I'd say stimulus, question stem, right answer choice, and then the wrong answer that you picked or considered, if there's one major one. But those are the only categories I'd be thinking about. Obviously, in some cases, it's more about looking at the answer choices, other cases more the stimulus, others the question stem, but it's about where specifically out of those areas you went wrong and going deeper on that. So in some cases, you might have a lot to say about the stimulus in terms of your understanding or misunderstanding of that. Other cases might be a lot more focused on the answer choices.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, great. Yeah, I just came across a question the other day where the answer choice B was really long, convoluted, and C was extremely short, and C was the correct answer. And it felt like a stylistic trip up, when you're reading it or something like that. So I can see where that would be really useful. Okay, I feel a lot better about that. even different resources on Socratic review sort of have you set things up differently. So obviously I wanted your opinion on that. I respect you so much. That being said, I'm coming across, I'm doing really well on memory, like kind of just figuring out stimulus. What is it saying? Just spending time on that drilling. I am coming across issues, and I feel like I understand conditionals, basic understanding, but I'm coming across, on those Q22s, when it's just conditional after conditional, I'm feeling that I'm very slow, and I'm having a hard time figuring out what is the most important information. I've heard to shorten, instead of coffee bean prices are rising, you're like, okay, C, B, to shorten it. I'm having a hard time even figuring out how to shorten and create those symbols when I'm reading those long stimulus. Is that just going to take practice? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's sometimes tough because you can overdo it in terms of like 4 capital letters for one variable.
That's what's happening to me.
Yeah. So it's really a matter of I think practice in developing your own shorthand. I typically recommend doing less when possible, but you also want to be careful to draw distinctions. And so coffee bean versus coffee shop could be 2 different things. If you just do C for both, that's obviously going to get confusing. So I focus more on the unique part, like beans versus shop.
Oh, I love that idea of like the unique part. Yeah, gosh, it just reminds me so much of something you said about looking for the overlap. It's almost the opposite of when I'm trying to figure out how to diagram. Like obviously you don't want to diagram every single question, but even being able to diagram it is what I'm coming across. So yeah, finding those unique portions of what they're talking about and trying to shorten it to that. I would love to spend time on that. Okay. That helps a lot too. Generally speaking, I have this idea in my head that those really long, convoluted conditional stimuli are like inference questions or maybe a flaw question. So I was thinking if I try to drill, 20 inference questions, I might find a good chunk of those in there. What do you think about that strategy?
Yeah, so if you want to focus on this particular skill set or task of diagramming formal logic and logical reasoning, yeah, you're going to see a lot of it in inference questions specifically. That's probably the number 1 area I would focus on. Then sufficient assumption questions. We did the workshop in the course recently going over diagramming there. Diagramming is a big part of that, or at least it can be. Flaw questions, sometimes yes, sometimes no, but that's really more in terms of cases where they are dealing with confusing necessary and sufficient conditions where you could diagram, but I typically wouldn't diagram flaw questions. So I'd focus more on those other 2 types.
You're amazing. You're so right. I was in that sufficient assumption workshop. You're like, remember that, Alyssa? And I'm like, yes, now I do remember that, Steve. Thank you so much for pointing
Yeah, of course.
it out.
Also
Great.
some tougher parallel questions too, by the way. Tougher parallels sometimes involve conditional logic where diagramming could be useful. They get pretty convoluted in certain cases.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I just remembered that there is a page on your blog that you have one page that lists out questions so you can drill, but you have a separate blog posting that talks about tough questions to drill. So I might look into tough parallel reasoning if I'm specifically trying to look for this kind of thing. That just gave me a really good idea. Places to start. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Of course, Alyssa, my pleasure. But before we sign off, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
Oh man, there was a lot of good insights today. Definitely a lot. I'd say probably the most fun insight I had was just trying to navigate how to manage my review process. And, when you brought it up and managing it in terms of the Socratic method, and just trusting that, especially looking, wanting to be a high scorer and looking at those stimulus really in detail and being able to understand those, that really gave me a lot of relief. I was like, okay, if I can manage my review process with the Socratic method and trust in that, I feel really good about even studying today. I feel really good.
Fantastic. Well, glad to help. Keep at it, and I'll see you in class soon.
All right. See you tonight, Steve.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.